Hey guys, welcome to race 2 and today we're racing at Crandon. So Crandon starts with a long straight that has a couple of bumps in it that can be pretty tricky at times, as you can see here. Then you can get a right-hander that's flat out in most cars at like 100 miles an hour or faster, then a small jump followed by a bigger jump before which I brake. Then you have a series of left-hand corners, relatively mid-speeds, then another big jump, and the first of several hairpins here. This one's relatively fast for a hairpin, and then you have another big jump followed by a tighter hairpin, right-handed this time. A minor jump here, and then into a sort of mid-speed left-hander, a small jump, then a fast right-hander into a tight left-hander, and then you get onto a long straight with a minor jump here and a long braking zone before a really tight hairpin. I missed the braking point by a little bit here in this run, but then you get onto another long straight with some bumps, and that can also really throw some cars off, and then you basically get back to the first part and you complete basically the first bit of the lap that we started on again, over this jump again, and then through this hairpin once again, and then once you get past that next hairpin you get to the finish line. And this time the differences in tire compound are gonna make a big difference, so let's see what happens this time around. So our first pairing is going to be the Rally Machine versus the FWM Armalite, and the Rally Machine is on all-terrain tires versus Sports compound on the Armalite, and already right off the bat on launch the Rally Machine already has an advantage, and then definitely here you can see through this first corner how the Armalite is just sliding around and struggling to put any power down, whereas the Rally Machine is much more planted. The Rally Machine also has more downforce, so it doesn't jump quite as far, and that also helps mitigate some of the time loss that you have when you have lower downforce. The Rally Machine is already considerably ahead of the Armalite. It's just much more planted through the corners, and it can put the power down much better. The Armalite only now gets to this right-hand hairpin, and it has to go really wide and pretty careful on the throttle, because otherwise you just slide all the way to the outside of the corner. Meanwhile, the Rally Machine is making great time already on the long straight, staying nice and planted over these bumps here, and then braking hard for the left-hand hairpin to complete the first lap, so to speak. Getting back to the part where you start when the standing lap starts, and through this right-hander pretty much flat out. Meanwhile, the Armalite is only now on that long straight, and so it has fallen considerably behind, as the Rally Machine is almost about to finish the whole run. And the Armalite, of course, still struggling in the corners. It's just slipping and sliding, which is, you know, to be expected on mud with a rally car. But there's a difference between like sliding and sliding because you don't have any grip, and sliding while also applying power and having some traction to get you through the corner quickly. There's a difference between that, and that's what we saw between these two cars, and the Armalite is almost 20 seconds slower. Let's get to our next head-to-head, the Scarab versus the Iris. Scarab on the utility tires, Iris on all-terrain tires. The Scarab launches hard, so does the Iris, and the Iris is apparently an extremely soft suspension because it is very, very bouncy over the bumps, and it also doesn't have much downforce at all, so it jumps very, very far over the bigger leaps here. And of course the problem that we saw with it on Atoll still apply here, namely that the all-wheel drive system is very front biased, meaning especially through a hairpin like this, you have to go with very little throttle input through here, and then only apply the power once you're basically already done with the corner, because otherwise the car will power understeer and basically go straight into the wall rather than like accelerating out of the corner. All of this being said, the Scarab is excellent once again, already has a significant lead over the Iris, powering down the long straight and then braking hard for the hairpin. A little bit late on the brakes, but we're good. It can take it. It's got a lot of torque to really power itself out of that hairpin, down the long straight, and then flat out through the right-hander and over the little jumps once again. The Iris again very unstable over the jump, and it is possible to get the Iris into a corner sideways, but then as soon as you apply a little bit of throttle, it pulls itself straight and then continues to understeer. And so that's the big problem with the Iris. Once again, just like it was on Atoll, only that I think well, the Scarab has already finished, only that I think here it's maybe a little bit less dramatic than on Atoll, because on Atoll you didn't get the car sliding into the corner very much, and still the difference between it and the Scarab is absolutely night and day, and so the Scarab wins by a huge margin. Next we have the Mara versus the HFF, the Mara on all-terrain tires, the HFF on hard tires. Both cars launching hard. The Mara has shoulder gearing here, and it absolutely flies. And the HFF struggles a little bit through this first right-hander, but it is overall still very good here. Remains composed over the jumps and stays very grippy through the corners indeed. But the Mara already has a lead because of that first corner, and it is just an absolutely excellent car here on mud. It turns quickly, and the fact that it has maybe not the most grip through the corners and likes to slide through in a controlled way, like it did on Atoll as well, that right here on mud is not nearly as bad for its overall time as it was on asphalt, because obviously in asphalt sliding is slow, whereas here on mud it's pretty much inevitable. Still, the HFF is able to keep up pretty nicely. Both cars absolutely flying down the long straight, and both cars going through this hairpin rather well, with the Mara still having a slight advantage here. Both cars once again blasting down the straight, and both cars feel relatively similar through that right-hander this time around. The HFF a little bit more composed over the jumps, and the Mara still hanging on to its lead and coming up to the second to last hairpin. And the Mara is going to hold on to its lead, and both cars finish in excellent times, but the Mara comes out on top. Next we have the two cars that came first and second on Atoll, the Saishin on the right and the Ornament on the left. However, the Ornament is on medium tires, so let's see how those work here on mud. The Saishin already established as a bit of a lead for this right-hander, as you can see how the Ornament is sliding around. The Ornament also has considerably less downforce, so it has to brake more over the jumps, whereas it just absolutely takes off. Because the engine is actually one of the strong points of the Ornament, or at least it's up there with the most powerful ones, of course. The Saishin is just much more grippy and much more planted through the corners, thanks to the tire compound choice. And it already has quite a bit of a lead over the Ornament, and it stays very controlled. It's extremely quick to turn in on mud here, the Saishin, and of course also very powerful, very fast down the straight. Speaking of which, it's already on the long straight, and once again you can brake very late with this car and still make it around the hairpin just fine. The ornament only just now gets through that hairpin. The Seishin already considerably ahead, flat out for the right-hander. And these jumps with this much downforce are a minor inconvenience when you're going this fast, but not too big of a deal. The ornament far behind at this point, although nowhere near as far behind as some of the cars we've seen previously in this race. And as the Seishin is about to finish its lap, the ornament still has one more hairpin to go, and it'll finish about 9 seconds behind the Seishin. And on to our final pairing, the capable wrecker on hard tires versus the Minos Meteor on utility tires. The Minos is going to pull ahead slightly on launch because it has better torque and the better tire compound for off-roading. And while it does have better grip around these corners than the capable wrecker, it is still not particularly grippy compared to some other cars that we've seen on utility tires, and it is partly down to the tire width and partly down to the downforce setup. The Minos, like the capable wrecker, just doesn't have a whole lot of downforce. And that made these two some of the hardest cars to control around here, in my opinion. The capable wrecker was fine. It has one problem though, and that is very, very little suspension travel. So the suspension, when you land from a jump, the suspension basically bangs up against the frame in the capable wrecker, and that makes it kind of do a secondary hop sometimes after, and kind of bounce off the ground again after you land. The Minos does not have that problem usually, but the Minos still, even though it's a little bit difficult to control, it is still much faster. The ceiling for performance is just much higher with the Minos, so when you get it right, it's got a lot more potential for performance. And it, as you can see, is already far ahead of the capable wrecker. Although, as you can also see, I'm struggling a little bit in it, just keeping it under control. It just doesn't hook up as nicely as some of the other cars that we've seen. And while it will win this race quite comfortably versus the capable wrecker, its finishing time is actually not in the top 3 here. And so it is about 5 seconds behind the winner, the Seishin. So we will see in the last race which of these cars is going to qualify for the main competition. Thanks for watching.